This is a video-based slideshow, which I put together to try to show the Bailey family history, Bailey-Fowler family history, in such a way that everybody could appreciate it, regardless, without getting buried in the details. To avoid the details, we've used this sort of skeleton map of the family tree going back 14 generations, and shows the patriarchs of the family at the far right, main patriarchs, and some of the key names to the entire course. There are 4 women who will be our benchmarks or waypoints to navigate this picture. First, there's Mary Chilton, who came over on the Mayflower, the first woman to set foot in the New World. Matani, whose ancestors arrived considerably before that. Francois Chafferot, whose son became the founder of the Hogan family in both Canada and the U.S., and Elizabeth Huguley, who is distinguished primarily because she links us back to Switzerland. Starting first with Mary Chilton, she came to the country, as everybody knows, the Mayflower arrived in 1620. In the middle of the picture is the stone that presumably Mary Chilton is supposedly stepped on. There's a plaque in Boston about her. And in addition, she didn't live to 1920, by the way. That was the date that the plaque was put up. But she is buried at King's Chapel in downtown Boston. Mary's connection to us goes to the Franklins, the Bruces, the Packards, and the Winslows. And it began with her marriage to John Winslow, who was a fairly distinguished gentleman in 1500s, actually 1600s. Matani, turning now to Matani in the south, she was a Creek Indian. She married George Galphin. And the fact that the Creeks were basically widespread throughout the area in Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida. And Galphin was an Indian trader who sold blankets and whiskey and whatever else, guns, to the Indians. He made out quite well, and later became a big plantation owner. The old town plantation on the right is not a site that is directly related to the George that married Matani. It's rather his son and his wife, Matani, who were granted a huge grant of land in southeast Georgia. Galphin himself had a plantation across the Savanah River from Augusta, Georgia, called Silver Bluff. It's a current archaeological site. A lot of excavations, interest in the buildings and the fort, and several engagements during the Revolutionary War were fought there. Francois Chafferot was Patrick Van Hogan's mother. Patrick Van Hogan became Patrick Hogan and moved out of Netherlands into Ireland, and then later immigrated to Canada. His son, however, left Ireland and came to Virginia and became the patriarch of the Hogan side of our family. The line begins in Fourmies, France, with Francois and her fathers and grandfathers. It then leads us to Riek, where Patrick was born, Riek in the Netherlands, and then from there to the New World. In America, the Hogans settled first in Virginia, then in North Carolina, and then eventually in Georgia, where my mother was born. And she connects the Hogan line to the Huguley line, and as I said earlier, it goes back to before 1603 with the Huguley line. Elizabeth married James Robert Hogan in probably around 1820, and was the mother of William Hogan, another William Hogan, who then led to John Pierce Hogan, who was the most current and lived in our time, most current Hogan. The other end of that chain was Leila May Hogan, my mother. William Hogan was the immediate father, and he was the son of John Pierce, who we just mentioned. To complete the romp through the family tree, we need to mention those patriarchs, the heads of the family who were immigrants that we haven't covered yet. There are 5. Joseph Bailey will cover first, and then we'll hit the 4 remaining subsequent. The succession from Joseph Bailey in Ireland to John today is very simple. It's just a straight line. There are some notable events through the path. Joseph served in the Revolutionary War. His grandson, Wiley Milton, served in the Civil War on the south side, serving as a private in the infantry. It's a book of which there's a book written called Holcomb's Regiment. And then my father fought in the First World War in the Old Hickory Division, also known as the 30th Division. The remainder of these patriarchs all plug in one way or another on the Bruce chain side of the family. Thomas Bruce was the first patriarch, and he was a miller. He had a place. This is near Boston, Worcester, and just east of where Brian worked. And in the 1680s, Thomas Bruce had a mill there. The next contributor to the Bruce line was Thomas Tobey, who came to the Americas in 1651 and occupied, in a very real sense, his family and his successors, heirs, and that sort of thing, occupied the town of Sandwich in Massachusetts on Cape Cod. Samuel Aborn was a Rhode Island family and became very involved and expanded in Rhode Island life. And their descendants have been active up till today. The founder, Samuel, was basically a shipbuilder. His line from a person named Anna Aborn married a spinster whose daughter Mary married into the Franklin line, Linda's grandmother's mother. Phoebe Rhodes was married to Samuel Aborn, and Phoebe links the whole family chain way back. It goes back 26 generations to a knight in the earliest Crusades, and the road lines also covers the Arnolds. The Arnolds claimed minor royalty back 21 generations ago, and the Arnold line produced, of course, Benedict. The last of our selection of patriarchs is Robert Potter, 1577. Mary, who was part of that lineage, married John Bruce 7 generations ago, and their son married Temperance Packard, and the Packards are an important component of the family tree. It began with George Packard, who was born 1579 and died in 1623. And the Packards are our connection to Mary Chilton, which is where we started.